guess we save the best, maybe the best for last. Certainly the president of this fine institution, Belhaven University. Liza just mentioned the book again, The Long View, Lasting Strategies for Rising Leaders by Dr. Roger Parrott, our next speaker, which gave rise to this conference. I remember meeting Dr. Parrott when he first came aboard here at Belhaven. I believe it was 1994, 5? And he's been a good friend ever since. He's helped me out in many, many ways. This book has inspired me, and I'm sure that his talk today will inspire you all as well. The name of Dr. Parrott's talk is A New Model for Planning. Dr. Roger Parrott.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Jack. When I interview new faculty, I always give them an opportunity to ask questions after I ask them everything I want to know about their lives. And the question they normally ask is, well, tell me what's your vision for the university? Where do you see this university in 10 years? If they're going to move here and invest their life in this place, that's a legitimate question. My answer usually shocks them, and my answer is, I have no idea. I really have no idea what the long-term view of what will happen at this place is about. Because here we are very committed to the distinction between what I would call destination planning and stewardship of our current opportunities. And I think in the higher education world, in my industry, and in a lot of business, we spend an awful lot of time and effort in destination planning, trying to predict where we're going to go rather than being good stewards of where we already are and the resources we've been given. And so we have, over the last 10 years, shifted that model around here so that our focus is not on trying to predict a future destination, but our focus is on trying to get the best out of what we already know and to use that well and trust God for whatever that future destination might be. And so this recession, to me, in many ways, has been a good thing because it has broken the back of a lot of destination planning. That's been a positive outcome of this recession. It's not too easy to plan in this uncertainty of time, and this model that moves from a focus on trying to predict the future to a focus on getting the best of what you already know has really helped us to become a much stronger place, and I think is a model that, as I've seen others adopt it, have had some success. Now, there are 6 reasons why I'm pretty much against destination planning. The first one is a very practical reason. Anybody who had a 5-year plan 5 years ago doesn't have one today. Maybe a couple at this panel predicted the recession, but most of us did not predict what was going to come. And so anybody who had a plan, that plan went out the window in a hurry when the bottom fell out of our economy. Academic business world has coined this as the Friedman effect, and they write about it now in Harvard Business Review and other places about the Friedman effect. Thomas Friedman writes a weekly column for the New York Times on 14 different times during a 30-month period of the intensity of the Iraqi war. He said the next 30 days were the turning point. 14 different times. Nobody could predict that future of where that war was going, and this Friedman effect of the inability to predict the future is so dominating our world now, I think it makes long-range planning obsolete in many ways. There's too much beyond our control. My industry, 15 years ago when I came to Belhaven, if somebody had told me that today there would be a university with gross revenues of $5 billion, 500,000 students, would have a stadium where the Super Bowl was played with their name on it and not have a football team or one residential student, I would say you're probably crazy. But that's what the University of Phoenix has done, and they have changed dramatically the face of American higher education. Fortunately, the federal government's going to change dramatically their face on November the 1st when new regulations come out to control these for-profit schools. But there's way too much beyond our control. And so that makes a lot of our planning ineffective. Secondly, long-range planning is most often empty productivity. We feel good about it. We put a lot of energy into it. We sign the committees. We get everybody moving. We have a lot of meetings, but there's not an awful lot that comes out of it. I think probably the good part in my arena where long-range planning tends to be helpful on campuses, it controls the critics, but to me it only controls them for a time. You're eventually going to have to deal with the critics. I'd rather talk to them straight up and learn and listen from them because you learn good things from critics. So it consumes a lot of energy, and it rarely creates what's significant. When I look at the significant things that have happened on this campus over the last 15 years, there was hardly anything in that list that was planned. Most of it was capturing opportunities that God gave to us. Our latest is a new campus in Chattanooga and Atlanta. That was never on our drawing boards, and it happened to come through a meeting with the president of another school back in April, and by June of this year, we had a campus in Chattanooga and Atlanta with over 200 students, cash positive from day one. A lot of great things out of it, but it was an opportunity captured, not a destination planned. I think, thirdly, the destination planning builds unrealistic expectations. Success is not a straight line graph of growth. But have you ever seen a long-range plan that doesn't have a perfectly sloped graph? Every one of them does. But that's not how life is. That's not how business is. And you cannot predict that kind of future. I think it gives an unrealistic, an idealized future that can only disappoint people. When we build buildings, often the architect will want to do an artist rendering. And they like to do that, and it shows everybody what the building's going to look like. I don't like artist renderings, and I won't do artist renderings. The reason I won't is there is no building in the world that is as perfect as an artist rendering. And when you see an artist rendering of a building and you actually see the building, you go, that's it? That's all there is? Every time it disappoints us, and I think long-range planning does the same thing. It sets this idealized, perfect world out there that can never be lived up to, and so all it can do is disappoint rather than accelerate us. I think, fourthly, it uses the wrong measures. Everybody right now is planning in round numbers. We're going to have something for 2020, certain growth, certain number of converts, certain enrollments, whatever it might be, whatever industry is. We're going to have it by 2020, and it usually has a 2 in it to make sure it sounds good. So we're going to have 2,000 by 2020 or 2 million or whatever the multiplier is. I think in doing that, again, we're trying to force a future into what we think sounds good rather than to the reality of what we're dealing with. I had somebody call me not too long ago and he was talking about his plan for 2015. He laid the whole thing out and I said, I don't think you can do it by 2015. I said, why don't you make it 2017? He said, it just doesn't sound as good, 2017. 2015 is a round number. Well, we're doing an awful lot of that. And I think in doing so, you know, life doesn't work in round numbers. And the focus should be on effort, not on outcome. On effort, not on outcome. I can't make anybody come to school. I can't hold our admissions counselors accountable by how many students enroll in this school. I can't hold our development people accountable for how much money is raised. I can't make anybody give money. All I can do is do the right things so that hopefully that will happen. And if we put the effort on the, the emphasis on the effort rather than measuring the outcome, I think we get a lot more out of what we're about. I think the fifth reason I'm against destination planning is it homogenizes our strengths. You can't put the truth always on paper. And, so in a business, and an organization, and a campus like this, there are some areas that need attention and need to be accelerated faster than other areas. Well, you can't write that out in a long-range plan, that your area is on hold for the next 5 years while we put emphasis on this area. That's not going to go over very well. And so instead, you tend to make it a series of compromises that homogenizes your strengths rather than accelerating the things that could go forward dramatically. And in doing so, I think you get a lot less out of it. This dance you saw earlier, you know, we are one of only 30 schools in America accredited in all 4 of the major arts: music, theater, visual art, and dance. It's us in Ohio State, Florida, Southern here in this state, Cal State, BYU, Wisconsin, big, huge places in Belhaven University. That came because we purposefully moved ahead on dance, even though we didn't move everybody ahead at the same way, but we knew that dance and theater and music and art would accelerate us far beyond the borders of Mississippi. And this fall, our freshman class was 71% out of state, and 15 years ago, it was about 25% out of state. Attempting to satisfy everybody doesn't move you ahead, and that's just part of the cost of leadership. You have to figure out where your strengths are and build on those rather than homogenize them. The sixth reason I'm against destination planning is that it's not the motivator we think it is. Ideas excite, decisions frighten. We can put out an idea and it's all exciting and wonderful, and as soon as we make it a decision, it scares everybody to death. And the reason is because as soon as the folks around us hear a decision, we have to put that in our personal framework. What does that mean to me? Until I get satisfied what it means to me, I can't see the bigger picture. Churches are notorious for this. They talk about a big new sanctuary they're going to build. They announce they're going to build it, and when they announce they're going to build a sanctuary, they get a whole bunch of resistance. Why? Because I sat in that pew, in that row, every week for the last 30 years my family has. We're not going to move. We don't know where the new one is. You got to picture where you personally fit into it, and this concept that that this plan will motivate everybody is usually not a reality. It tends to scare people more than it does to accelerate them. And I think part of that is that also it's not the motivator we think it are, because the outcomes are fairly predictable. You know, in my world, we always have a blue ribbon panel that meets for 18 months to come up with these long-range plans. Every campus does it. And I can pretty much predict the outcome of that blue ribbon panel before they ever have the first meeting. They're always the same. And you can do that in any industry. The outcomes are very predictable, and that's not where the real world works.